Leadership is not a title. It's not a corner office or a nameplate or 1,000 followers nodding in agreement. Leadership is a weight, a sacred responsibility, a fire that must be carried not for your own glory, but for the growth of others. And if you do it right, you don't just lead people, you lift them. You don't just give orders, you give identity. Because real leadership is not about being in charge. It's about being charged with a vision that's bigger than you, a purpose that stretches beyond your comfort, and a commitment to truth that does not waver when tested. And here's the truth. Every generation redefines leadership. But the principles, the truths, they do not change. They echo through time. They whisper through the decades. They burn through noise and trends and surface-level hype. Because leadership, at its core, is timeless. It is not dictated by technology. It is not confined to platforms. It is not reshaped by fashion or filtered by popularity. It is a foundation, a way of being, a standard you carry even when the world is too distracted to notice. The greatest leaders, from ancient kings to modern CEOs, from battlefield generals to high school mentors, all carry the same flame. It's the flame of responsibility, the flame of vision, the flame of sacrifice. They all understood one thing. Leadership isn't about having power over people. It's about holding power for people. It's about becoming the kind of person others can trust with their future. And trust, that's the real currency. You don't lead with fear. You don't lead with manipulation. You don't lead with charisma alone. You lead with trust, earned slowly, kept fiercely. And trust is built not in speeches, but in standards, in how you show up when the spotlight is gone, in how you respond when the pressure rises, in how you treat those who can't offer you anything but honesty. If people trust your character, they will follow your vision. So, if you want to lead, truly lead, you must first lead yourself. Because you cannot take people somewhere you haven't gone. You cannot demand discipline in others if you make excuses in private. You cannot call for vision if you're still hiding from clarity. Leadership begins not with authority, but with alignment. You must become the standard you speak about. You must become the proof before you become the plan. Because people don't follow instructions, they follow example. And this is where most fail. They want the influence without the inner work. They want the loyalty without the integrity. They want the spotlight without carrying the torch. But you can't fake depth. You can't shortcut trust. You either embody the values or you violate them. There is no neutral ground. Because every time you speak, your team is watching. Your family is watching. The next generation is watching. And what they need from you is not inspiration without substance. They need consistency without cracks. Your words mean nothing if your habits scream something else. Your mission is just noise if your mindset is still at war with itself. That's why real leadership begins in silence, in the moments before the decisions, in the way you carry your own chaos, in the standards you set when no one is looking. You don't wait to lead when the time is right. You lead when it's hard, when it's unclear, when it's unpopular. That's when your voice becomes a compass, not a microphone. Because leadership is not about being liked. It's about being trusted. And trust often requires saying what no one else will say, doing what no one else wants to do, making the call that others will avoid. You cannot fear being misunderstood, because if your values are true, they will outlive the criticism. And if your vision is real, the right people will find their way to it, not because you shouted louder, but because you stood stronger. And when it comes to generations old and new, the true test of leadership is not how much you teach, but how much you're willing to learn. You must be rooted in wisdom, but flexible in expression. You must honor the past without becoming trapped in it. You must welcome the future without forgetting what matters. Every generation sees the world differently, and that's not a threat. It's an opportunity. Because leadership that lasts is leadership that listens. Younger generations don't want perfect leaders. They want honest ones, ones who admit mistakes, ones who ask questions, ones who know the weight of their words. And older generations, they want relevance, but they also want reverence. They want to know their sacrifices meant something, that their scars became bridges, that their lessons are not discarded, but woven into progress. That's your job. To stand between generations, not as a divider, but as a bridge. To take the strength of the past and the potential of the future and forge something timeless. Something rooted in character, not clout. In courage, not convenience. Because the leaders who last, the ones remembered long after their voices fall silent, are not the loudest in the room. They are the deepest. They don't need to dominate. They don't need to shine. They need to serve. And not in a way that begs for recognition, but in a way that builds people, that raises standards, that strengthens culture, that multiplies vision through the hearts of others. Because service isn't weakness. It's the highest form of strength. It says, I am here not to be above you, but to walk with you. And to serve like that, you must be humble enough to admit you don't know everything. You're not always right. You're not the hero in every story. In fact, great leaders don't need to be the hero at all. They raise heroes. They pour courage into others. They don't hoard the light, they reflect it. And in doing so, they create movements, not monuments. But that kind of leadership, it requires radical ownership. No blaming, no hiding. No, that's not my fault. If something breaks under your watch, you own it. If someone falls under your leadership, you learn from it. You don't run from responsibility, you grow inside it. Because leadership isn't about comfort, it's about accountability. You take the hit. You stand in the fire. You look people in the eye and say, this is on me and I'll fix it. And that kind of ownership builds resilience. Because let's be honest, leading people will break your heart. It will test your patience. It will stretch your capacity. You'll be misunderstood, betrayed, ignored. You'll give everything and watch people walk away like it was nothing. And still you stay. Still you build. Still you rise. Because resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about growing stronger while you carry the weight. It's about continuing to believe in the mission, even when no one else claps, even when the room goes quiet, even when your hands shake and your voice is tired. You show up again and again and again, because your presence, your consistency becomes the proof, the evidence that says this matters, the signal that says you're not alone. Because sometimes the most powerful leadership isn't in your speeches, it's in your stability. And if you really want to lead across generations, you must give more than instructions. You must give identity. Help people see who they are. Remind them of what they can become. Pull out the greatness that's hiding beneath insecurity, pain, and doubt. That's not management, that's ministry, that's not systems, that's spirit. That's the difference between a boss and a builder. So build. Speak life into people who are used to silence. Believe in those who've forgotten how to believe in themselves. Lead in such a way that your presence is not about being needed, but about empowering others to no longer need you. That's legacy. That's leadership. And when your leadership becomes a mirror, when people see their own potential more clearly because of how you showed up, then you haven't just led a generation. You've lifted it.